Why did you choose Lost Toys? And did you get offered a job at Bullfrog at all with Peter?
Oh, at Lionhead.
Sorry, with the Lionhead. Sorry.
No, basically, when Lionhead moved out of house, I guess I don't. I was never. I wasn't one of those invited to go over to Peter's house, but I wouldn't have been because I was part of the exec group at Bullfrog. I was the head of R&D, so him taking me would have been a bad move anyway. So I'd kind of lost touch with him because that
Mm.
initial group of people that left from Bullfrog had already gone, and also um, we had a plan. I mean, I was in one of my business partners at Lost Toys was Les Edgar. We had a plan with Lost Toys, and one of my business partners was Les Edgar, and the other one was had been the lead programmer on Indestructibles, and the other one was the lead artist from Theme Park World, Jeremy and Darren. And we just had this plan to do to do games sort of with a relatively small team efficiently, and we did do it. It did work out. We actually delivered 6 SKUs on time in 3 years, and then and I was kind of proud of both of the games. There was two games, and I was kind of proud of both of those games. And yeah, it was great fun. I mean, and a lot of people, because at one point we were up to about 18 people, and I still occasionally see those guys, and I saw a couple of them just at a party this summer, and like people very fondly remember that time. But we it was just weird how we were sort of out on our own because our first game was sort of late generation PlayStation 1 game. And initially it was first party for Sony, and they ended up saying they didn't want it, and then we sold it to Rockstar, and they did a sort of it got released. It was a thing called Moho. It was a sort of rolling weird robots on rolling. It had originally been a rolling ball game. But initially been trying to get a license to bring back Marble Madness. But when it went to Sony, they wanted it to be sort of a bit more edgy. So they became a ball with a robot hanging on top of it with this. And it turned into this sort of weird battle game, and it was kind of a cool game, but it was on the wrong platform because by that time all the games on the place, most of the games selling on the PlayStation were games that had previously been 40 quid selling for 20 quid. And
Mm.
there was kind of a big budget release thing on the end of the PlayStation 1. But then we did a thing called Battle Engine A Killer, which I know people think I shouldn't say this, but I think it was the best game I ever worked on. It was, but we were doing it for Infogrames, who were just in the process of becoming Atari, just so they could sort of wipe out their bad reputation name. We were finished. It would have been out the same Christmas that the first Halo came out, but we were, but it got delayed until January because Infogrames Atari wanted to put all their money into the Matrix game, which nobody remembers, for that Christmas. And so it got delayed. And the other problem that we had is that it was this game where you had a big island that was, I think it was 5 kilometers across, and it had a battle going on it. It was all about sort of these two forces fighting over the remaining landscape on this planet where the water level was rising, and it was sort of played. If you can imagine, like having an RTS game where the game is playing itself, the two sides are playing, and you just dive in first person, and you get to sort of switch the sort of influence the battle in favor of the blue
Mm.
team, and that was kind of what the game was. And there were some bits, some levels were much more scripted than that, but it had like these really cool systems for levels of detail and stuff. So you could actually, yeah. So there were actually like thousands of units on some of the levels,
Yeah.
and but that, obviously there's a trick for that, because you can't. Some of them, they're less than 1 pixel big when they're a certain distance away, but they would fold down into being into a group rather than a single units and stuff, and all that just all worked, and it was great. But the problem with it was, that you would say, oh yeah, you're part of this you're this person in this new battle engine tech that's got to sort of go in there and swing the battle in favor, swing the balance in favor for your side in the battle. And that sounds exactly like the description of so many games,
Mm.
but we were sort of doing it for real. It genuinely was that. You could go into a level and go and sit and park on top of a mountain and
Mm.
just watch your side lose. And like on some of the early levels, and on some of the early levels, all you just do is go in and take a few key things out, and then they would, and that would be enough to win it. And it was and the other problem was that we had like these tanks and battles on beaches and stuff, and there was a lot of that in Halo.
Mm.
But in Halo, when they did it, their tanks looked better than ours. Why did their tanks look better than ours? Well, because their level with the tanks on, the sea was like a sort of barrier thing, and then there was sort of the cliffs were a barrier. Ours was on a sort of 5 kilometer thing, and there were 50 tanks and OD systems that made them work. Made them shrink down to virtually nothing in the distance. But when you got up close to them and walked up to the tank, our tanks weren't as good as theirs, because we were solving all these technical problems that people, I guess, didn't really care about, or they hadn't been told why they should care about them by us or the marketing. So although it did okay, that game, I mean, but it didn't do as well as it should have done. And
Yeah.
and yeah, and then the last game that we did at Lost Toys, we were doing two games. We were doing a werewolf game that was going to be, it could have been really cool. We had some very good tech coming, and they were, both these games were using the same tech. And the other one was Stunt Car Racer Pro, which was there's actually a video of it on YouTube, which is kind of interesting to look at. But that was a great project, because we only got to do it because John Cook, our agent, was also Jeff Crammond's business manager.
Uh,
So because of the connection through John, we were able to do it, and we got this thing working. Like, we literally got the actual physics engine from the original Stunt Car Racer that was written in 68,000 assembly,
yeah.
ported it to C++, and then so it was algorithmically identical. And then we found out that it didn't work on like normal on our mesh tracks. And the reason it didn't work is because in Stunt Car Racer, if you remember, the tracks were defined by splines.
Mm.
They weren't freeform splines. They were sort of like, they were only splines in one. It's sort of like, like a height field is simpler than a mesh.
Yeah.
If you imagine like a height field where but you can only sort of collide in it from above, but they're still proper spline curves. And what that meant was that if you took the original Stunt Car Racer physics and made it work on a polygon mesh, the sort of facets of the polygons would make the car shake off the track.
I
So
see.
what we did is, rather than change the physics system, we changed the way the mesh was represented, so that it was actually represented by full-blown spline curves.
Right.
So it felt like Stunt Car Racer, even though it had loops and corkscrews and stuff. It literally felt like Stunt Car Racer, and it had every single feature of it. Like, one of the things that you probably don't realize is there in Stunt Car Racer is that it has a lot of auto alignment. Like, if you get close to being central on the track, it will straighten you out completely, because otherwise you'll never make any of those big jumps.
Oh,
Otherwise, the accuracy you would need on takeoff to land is completely impossible. So we ended up with this thing that it had an inbuilt level editor. You could build tracks with corkscrews and loops and stuff, and it actually genuinely felt like Stunt Car Racer running at 60 frames a second.
right.
And it was lovely, but we just, for reasons that I don't fully understand, and I don't want to guess at now. We just couldn't get anyone to take on, anyone interested enough to do it. I don't know, maybe retro wasn't a big enough thing, and there weren't enough people getting excited about the possibility, of a stunt car racer remake. But the sad thing is that so few people actually got to feel why it genuinely was a stunt car racer remake and not just another, tracks and jumps and stuff, clone. But yeah, it was that was a that was a real shame that never came out.
Yeah.
But that was what was happening. So it was September 2023 that that Lost Toys finally gave up. In fact, actually, that was it limped on for a bit longer than that because we managed to release the PC version of Battle Engine Killer. That was an interesting thing as well. Like the PC version of Battle Engine Killer came out on, bundled for graphics cards and stuff, because we put a lot of features of like shiny reflective water and stuff back when that was quite an advanced thing, into the PC version. And when we were at Bullfrog, so I'm going backwards in time here. When we were at Bullfrog, we ported Magic Carpet and High Octane to the 3D Labs graphics cards at the time, and I remember that we got $750,000 for each. We got $1.5 million for doing those ports, so that they could become in-game pack-ins on those early 3D cards. When we ported Battle Engine Killer to be on a pack-in for ATI cards, we got about 50.
Right.
No, because we weren't Bullfrog. We weren't, it wasn't that nobody knew, it was such a, it was interesting sort of being stuck out like that. But yeah, the PC version eventually came out, and it did actually stop us from being quite so in debt at the end of that. Thanks to some very, very hard work by a couple of people. But yeah, it was Lost Toys was a great. It's just a shame it didn't work. We weren't putting our efforts in the right directions with hindsight. But it was a fun time to work, and I'm quite proud of both the games that we released and the game we nearly released. But
yeah. Thanks for doing the chat, Glenn. It's been really, really interesting. I've loved all your games, so it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for listening. It's always fun to reminisce, and I know I can just go on forever, as you probably just realised.